call the meeting to order, and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is Ross coming? I saw him in the hall before. All right, roll call of council members. Councilmember Gilman.
Here.
Councilmember Omrine.
Here.
Councilmember Hattlestead.
Here.
Councilmember Morgan.
Here.
Councilmember Batcher.
Here.
All council members are present. Also at the table on my left, City Attorney, Amy Newsom, and City Administrator, Amy Newsom. City Attorney Arneson, I believe, will be here. I've not heard otherwise, so we will expect him soon. Okay, with that taken care of, are there any changes in the agenda? Any additions?
I have one addition and one thing to remove.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
would like to remove from the consent agenda G, the Sibley County Cancer Fighters 1 to 4 day temporary on-sale liquor permit. I'd like to remove that. And I would like to add an update on the beer kegs being stored at the community center.
That will be under new business?
It's a new business, number
16.
16.
Okay, any other changes? If not, motion is in order to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Batchor, second by Councilmember Hattlestead to approve the agenda with the noted changes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. All right, the consent agenda this evening consists of the following items. Approval of the bills. Item B, approval of the January 21st, 2020 City Council Workshop Minutes. Item C, the January 21st, 2020 City Council Minutes. Item D, January 29th, 2020 Streets Committee meeting, minutes, I should say. Item E, approval of the following hires for Arlington Ambulance: Danielle DeBoer, Lee Forcier, and Christopher Mordica. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Item F, approve waiver to allow non-city of Arlington resident Darnell Halverson to serve another term on planning and zoning. And then we will move up to item G. We crossed off the item G on the agenda. Move up to item G, accept retirement of Luke Geib, 11 years of service on the from the Arlington Fire Department. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Can I say one thing real quick?
Yes, you may.
I made one quick change to the council meeting minutes, just to clarify under number 12, where we talked about changing the rates for the snow removal rates, just to clarify that large lots, that Tom Hattlestead made the motion for large lots to go from $75 to $50 and extra large lots from $150 to $75.
Correct. That was my motion.
Okay. Is that clear with everyone? All right, motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Hattlestead, second by Councilmember Gilman to approve the consent agenda with the noted change. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion is carried. Good evening, Attorney Arneson. All right, moving on to addressing the council. Is there anyone here this evening that wishes to address the council at this time? Seeing none, move on to announcements.
We have the Southwest Corridor Transportation Coalition meeting February 7th from 7:30 in the morning to 9 at the Chaska City Hall. That I put on because we received a request for a letter of support from someone attending that event. If any of us would like to go, you are welcome to. Pheasants Forever has their big banquet this weekend at the community center. Should be a lot of people here. And Laura's event is still on there because it was moved due to the weather in January to February 29th up at the Arlington Book Project.
Okay, any questions on the announcements?
I have one question. That Southwest Corridor Transportation Coalition, are they expecting someone from Arlington to attend?
We were just invited. We are welcome to attend if we would like to.
Okay.
I've attended probably, I don't know if they have a meeting quarterly, I go to probably every other one. The county commissioners are also invited, so
Correct.
there's some attendance usually from Sibley County. Any other questions on the announcements? There's no communications this evening, so we will then go on to reports. Fire Department 2019 Annual Report, Chief Zaski.
Thanks for having me. Does everybody have a copy of this, or do you need a copy, or?
It was in their packets, but
I'd like a hard copy.
I'll take one
Yeah.
now.
they can have
Sure.
hard copies too.
It's easier to read there than on the phone.
Thank you.
Since quite a few of you are new to the council, I'll kind of go through this page by page. This is an annual report I give every year with this booklet and stuff, and kind of highlights the stuff. The first page when you open it is who all the officers are for the 2020 year. The second page is the calls. At first glance, when you look at this, you think the calls went down actually. But if you look close at this, in 2018, we were securing the helipad east of the car wash. So the call volume actually went up for 2019. And this page is probably the most critical page for any firefighter on the department. Because everything with the fire department is based on percentages for the retirement and bonuses. Any questions on this page?
What do you mean by percentages, and percentages of what, or what?
They have to make 20% of all
Okay.
calls,
Okay.
11% of drills, like that. The
Okay.
only thing that doesn't count towards that is Skywarn.
Okay.
Second page is the mutual aids that we gave and received. As you can see, in 2019, we received 2 mutual aids. That would have been the trailer house fire that we had at the end of the year. The next page is the projected capital improvement. About this time last year, the council approved the purchase of a new tanker. The chassis came in late November. I just talked to Custom Fire. They figure we'll take possession of the truck in June. We went over the specs of the truck here in December. We did make one change to the specs. Probably March, middle April, we'll go out to Wisconsin and do a pre of the build. What they do is the truck is all handmade, so they'll put the truck together before they paint it. I'll have to go out there and sign off of it. And the whole truck committee goes out there and we review it, and if there's any changes. The price is still firm. Any changes that are being made to the truck is being picked up by the fire department. That was the agreement that the fire department had with the city council when the truck was approved. And you can see I kind of laid out what the projected of the trucks coming up in the next years. Typically we keep our rigs 30 years, so that it's laid out there. The turnout gear right now, I'm working with Amy on a USDA grant for the turnout gear. I talked to our grant writer quite extensively Saturday. The air packs, we're gonna actually be submitting for 22 air packs, 30 masks, 44 tanks. The way the grant is written, she said it was in our best interest to go for the max on this. So there's gonna be a lot of work in the next coming weeks. We're actually meeting, the committee and myself are meeting tomorrow to tighten up the specs, to resubmit it to, we got it down to 3 vendors. They'll have 7 days to get us the quote, and then I have to review the quotes and submit it to her to submit it for the FEMA grant. So we've made it through one stage with her, so. But the turnout gear, that was kicked out right away. That's why we're working with the USDA grant with Amy on that one.
Say, John, do you know, So this 2028, the 1998 engine, do you have any rough estimate on what the cost of that?
I'd say 600,000.
So it's something we need to get in the CIP, start saving for.
And the key to the whole engine part, not so much the other trucks, but the engine, your main engine under NFPA cannot be more than 15 years old. So if you do the math, the 2014 engine will be 15 years old in 2000, because it's a 2014, so in 2029. And as you can see, it takes about 18 months to build a tanker. It takes longer to build an engine. So you want to get a jump on it, because otherwise you're going to be behind. Any other questions on this page? Okay. Here's a few updates from 2019. We received a grant from the Lions. We bought 35 particular goods at a cost of $29.75. We received a grant from McLeod Power, and we bought 35 sets of gloves. You're probably asking why I'm buying 35 instead of 30. We wreck stuff like fire calls, and you always have to have spare on hand. The fire department, with their fundraisers, bought 30 high-vis vests for when we're on the highways, and jackets and hats. And then we received the DNR grant that we bought pagers with, and the city and the townships picked up the other half of it, of the 5,000 for the cost of that. And then we received from firefighter training and stuff, we keep submitting, and that's the money there you see is what we received back. Now that number will decrease drastically, because it used to be in past years, if somebody didn't submit for the money, you could resubmit for it. They've done away with that. So that money will stay in the fund, otherwise there was towns that weren't submitting, so we keep resubmitting, and we get into round 2 and get money again. Well, that went away now for 2020. When I was going through this, there's some kind of interesting facts here. All this you see down here, this is all stuff, because I'm always asked where does the salary and the money go. None of this stuff that you see on here we can bill for. We had a lot of power line poles last year, if you remember back in the winter, got knocked down, and then we had the storms come through, that was that. The sandbagging was the manhole cover got knocked off at the end of Main Street, and we were dumping the creek into the sanitary sewer again. And then the next pages are all just the trucks. The truck that will be getting replaced is the 1994 tanker. And our trucks have not yet been certified from 2019. They're supposed to be here the middle of February. They got so backlogged that they never got, and that, I don't know if you remember, that was a $10,000 cost to get the trucks repaired, so they're certified. Most of the other repairs from that when we had the inspection have been completed. We either did them in-house or Paul Peeps did them.
Going back to the page where you have the grants received from Lake McLeod Co-op Power, do you ever apply to Minnesota Valley Electric?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I didn't have a good year this year. I didn't even bat 50%. I think I maybe got a third of what I applied for.
Okay.
Question for you, refresh my memory. When we bought the new brush rig, were we gonna sell the 2005 or was the plan?
We sold the 1988.
Okay, we sold one, yeah, okay.
And
I forgot about the other one.
We got an unbelievable amount of money for that truck.
And you probably told me and I forgot.
I don't even remember what it was. I went to gave you 4,000 for it, and I think they got like 7,000 or something.
Was that old but in good shape?
Yeah, I don't know, 11,000.
Yeah.
Well, that
The
was-
guy that bought it
I think it
from
was
us
7 something.
called me and asked me where the radio was for it, and I said, back in '88, that was an option, there was no radio.
Didn't that go to Bronco?
Uh-huh.
That's what I thought. Now I think I remember.
Yeah, it was a light duty 3/4 ton pickup.
With how many miles you had to put it?
11,000.
11,000.
Wow.
But there was no rust on it. You could take
No.
your hand under the back fender wells and feel it. It was like a brand new truck.
Yeah.
So even for $6,000, look what a new one costs.
Yeah.
Add another few extra zeros in there.
Anything else?
Nope. I think so.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, John.
Very good.
Ambulance Annual Report 2019. Director Sarah Burton, good
Oh,
evening.
Sarah.
That's nice to meet you, sorry. Judah.
Hi.
So, I tried to follow this year, kind of what John had laid out, just so you have kind of similar compare and contrast, stuff. A lot of the data that we collect is coming from Minstar, so it's kind of pulling numbers. So I can't get always the exact things on certain things as it is laid out. But I'll just kind of skip past the first page, because you know who we serve. So I did put on there that, as we're looking at now, the second page, kind of looking forward into 2020, because we did start this JPA trial as of the 5th. So this is all the members that are on both Gaylord and Arlington Ambulance, and who's in the officer position. And the current membership is 19 for Arlington and 13 for Gaylord. The next page, it is just breakdown of the call. We had a total of 459 calls in 2019. And you can kind of see the breakdown of the townships on there and the no loads. And then how many of those calls were broken up into the ALS with the paramedic on and the BLS, which is the EMTs on. The next page was our response time. So this is kind of what we look at to see how we're doing regarding to getting to that scene on time. And that's from the time that the page came out to the time that that truck arrived on scene. As you can see, our average is 7.4 minutes. Any questions so far? The next page is our projected capital improvement plan. I tried to break it down as individually as I could for bases, but there's gonna be some things that tie in, and those are in the middle of it. I just put it under combined needs. So things like radios. The radios that we currently have are no longer going to be manufactured or going to be able to get parts for them eventually. But they are a very good radio. So as long as we can keep them, going and keep batteries in them that are working good, I think that's best to hold on it. Another thing I thought of, so on there you see like it says 60,000 is needed, but we may get a better deal. So the more you purchase, right, the more the price comes down. So that might be if everyone else has the same radios, maybe we combine with fire and police and do them all at the same time. Pagers are one thing that we're always gonna kind of continue to need over time, but right now we're doing good, so I put that in 2023. And one thing that the state has kind of leaned towards for quite some time, but they haven't actually set an official date, was computer charting. Currently, right now, all of the billing, I enter into the state database via hand, every paper form that we go through. So they would like to see that all go computer charting. So on there is just the computer charting tablets. I'm just thinking like little iPad or tablet kind of thing. I would probably need about 4 or 5 of them. The big stuff for Arlington though would be the replacement of our current rig 370, which is a 2007 road rescue for $300,000 in 2022. Any questions on capital improvements?
I have one question.
Yeah.
It wasn't capital improvement, it was before that, when you
Oh.
said that Arlington had 19 members and Gaylord had, I believe it was 13.
Yep.
Are we, quote, fully staffed at those numbers, or do we still need more?
No, we'd still want more.
Okay.
And even with the JPA, we'd set it up for a max of 40, and that's if we can get everyone on board and working their minimum hours, and we're kind of
Okay.
playing that out a little bit in this trial period. But I'd like to see up to 40. It just takes so much pressure off of those ones that are just working a ton of hours.
So is that more EMR, EMT, or,
We'd like to have all EMT, right, because then you're not constricted to who's
Yeah.
the driver and who's the
yeah,
back.
I understand.
But, yeah. And the goal would be that the EMRs go back to finish their EMT,
Yeah.
you know?
Do we have enough EMRs?
Yes, and well, I have some staffing stuff up on the last
Oh.
issue I'll get to.
I got ahead of myself.
That's okay. And then I just went into the highlights. Oh, and then on there, just as you see, you know, there's, with the capital outlay, it's really hard to know, a lot of this stuff because we are in this trial period. You know, a lot of this stuff will have to be reassessed and kind of see how we look at the end, whether we go forward or not.
So this capital is Arlington's needs only?
So on the top left side, you see East Base. That's Arlington.
Okay.
And then the combined needs would be the stuff that we would get, you know, both together. I didn't want to put it on one or the other because it would be a split. And then West Base is Gaylord.
So, Sarah, under the combined needs with the radios, and you indicate that you may get a better deal working with the police department, fire department, would that then be Arlington Police and Fire, Gaylord Police and Fire, both of
Could be
them?
both, yeah.
Okay,
Because obviously, the more you get, the more that price goes down.
Mhm.
So if everyone's in the same boat with that same model number of radio,
Mhm.
that might just be a good time to do it.
okay.
You know, the sad part is, like I said, the radios we have are actually really good radios,
Mhm.
and everyone likes them. The problem is they won't be making any parts to replace them.
Okay.
You know, the batteries are something we can always replace easily and pretty cost effectively. But when you're talking about needing a whole bunch of them, that might be the time that you just do that all at once, you know?
So isn't there like state bid or something like that where the price is the price on things like that?
I'm not sure.
Yes, that is correct, state contracts.
So this was our 2020 highlights. We received some money from the Lions. We purchased new auto pulse batteries. We received a grant from Concord Financial and purchased a RAD 57 pulse CO oximeter. And recently received a grant from McCall County Co-op to purchase a new AED. We had 3 resignations. We hired 1 EMT. We had 19 open shifts for 2019, which we relied on mutual aid. Special events, I thought this was kind of an interesting fact because you think of us, you know, only the call stuff too, and there's all these extra activities that are going on. And these are some of the big ones. We covered 3 football games, 2 bull riding events, a tractor pull, and 20 races. And considering that's our weekend stuff, right, these people are really putting in a lot of time. And we also celebrated our 50th anniversary of the ambulance. Looking forward, we have 3 people currently in application process. 1 already has an EMR, and since me writing this up, has been on. And 2 will be coming soon. And then 2 of them are able to start the EMT class in March. So that's
Good.
good numbers there. A couple of applications we had gotten from Arlington, actually those applicants lived in the city of Gaylord, so I had to push them down to Gaylord to apply there. So we're kind of in a hold there.
Still helps the team though.
You bet, you bet. But we need them 5 minutes from their base per se, so it was just kind of cleaner to do it that way.
So are they hiring as well?
Yes.
Cause we're, on our packet, we hired some, so.
Yep,
And
Yep.
they're also grabbing some more. Okay.
yep, I think, so there was 2 that lived in the city of Gaylord that I talked to, and then 1 more, just a recent phone call, said that he was interested in applying too. So I'm hoping that there's gonna be 3 applicants for Gaylord.
Oh, wow, okay.
Mhm.
Any other questions of Sarah?
How are the shifts? Are they filled now with the JPA?
So
The
far,
3
we
month,
have not had 1 open shift,
okay.
and now we're almost at a month.
So looking forward, are they all filled or are we still?
Well, it's really hard because they normally wouldn't have been. A lot of times people pick up that shift within a 24-hour section before that start of that call or before that day. So it's hard to balance that. If it's we do a bidding process now, so a lot of them are filling it before, but not 100%, probably closer to 60% filled beforehand. But I can't also mix one person from Gaylord and one person from Arlington, right? So there's some logistics in doing it, but it's better,
And are you talking about just daytime shifts there or nighttime as well?
both.
So, Mr. Mayor, I
Yes.
don't know if you're interested in an update on what's been happening since January 5.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I have some data, some information for you. So as
Do
Sarah
you,
said.
you wanna use a microphone, please, Daryl?
No, I don't want to use.
You don't wanna use a microphone? Do it anyhow.
We can clip one.
Introduce
too.
yourself.
Yes, you can. My name's Daryl Ryan, I'm Director of Ridge.
All right.
And helping Sarah here with the JPA and the merger with the Gaylord Ambulance and Arlington's rigs. So as Sarah said, there's, all the shifts have been filled. There's been one shift in Gaylord that was not filled, so that was covered by mutual aid with Arlington during the nighttime hours. So with that aspect, that was one of the measuring points, is how many shifts would go uncovered. And so in 1 month, you'd say it's looking pretty good. But here's the numbers. There's been a total of 58 ambulance requests since January 5th when it's opened. 9 of those are transfers out of Ridgeview Sibley. So that's always been a concern, is how many transfers leave Ridgeview, or how many that takes the ambulance out. 5 calls were canceled. One was a transfer from a Mankato back into the community, and we gave 1 runaway. Of those 58, 42 we would consider emergent type calls, where they're going out unscheduled, lights and siren, going through the 911 system. Of that, 21 have been in Gaylord, and 21 have been in Arlington. So everybody's playing fair. They're not getting, injuring themselves more in one town or the other, or getting sicker in one town or the other. And then the measurement is what's our response times, right? Because that was a concern, what's be that response. So during the daytime hours, the count is from the time we get the call, not the time that they're dispatched, the time they get the call to the time they arrive at scene, which is different than the measure from what you saw last year, which is when they get dispatched. So it's starting the clock sooner, okay? In Gaylord, the daytime average response time is 6.5 minutes. In Arlington, it's 6.7 minutes. So that's really good for that time frame. At night, Gaylord, it's 8.4, and in Arlington, it's 10.4. Now, that's because there's been a couple runs of Green Isle, and obviously it's a little farther, so that increases your response time a little bit. There have been calls where the ambulance has been stationed in Gaylord, and the paramedic has been in Arlington, and the call has been in Gaylord, and the ambulance and the paramedic coming from Gaylord, or from Arlington, arrive in Gaylord at the same time, and there's actually been times when the paramedic has beaten the ambulance coming from Gaylord to the community, and it's happened the other way around, where the rig has been here, and the paramedic is coming from Gaylord, and the paramedic gets to the scene or within the minute of the transport ambulance service. So as predicted, it's been a very good response time with that. So in Gaylord, there's been 15 calls during the daytime hours when the paramedic's been on. 6 of those times the medic came from Gaylord, and 9 of them came from Arlington. And in Arlington, there's only been 10 calls during the daytime hours. 3 times the medic came from Gaylord, and 7 times it came from Arlington. So when you look at the big picture, it looks very good. Response time's been very, very good. All the shifts are being filled. We only had 1 shift in the month that has not been filled, but then again, mutual aid's been used for that. The other factor is there's 3 times where there's been multiple calls at the same time, which was a concern by everybody about, well, if we're dropping the 1 ambulance and there's 2 calls, what are we gonna do about that? So there's been 3 occurrences when there's been 2 calls, only 1 during the daytime hours, which is the time frame they were concerned about. And 1 call was in Gaylord and 1 call was in Arlington, and it was a 7-minute and a 13-minute response time. So they were able to staff up a second truck. So again, that was kind of what we thought would happen, but until we get experiences with it, we don't know for sure. So again, good response times. The other 2 times occurred during evening hours. 2 times as a result of transfers going out, the 2 calls were because 2 transfers going out, and the other ones during the nighttime hours. And there was a call in each town, and again, they both respond, and because Arlington's up, Gaylord's up, and both respond. There's 1 call where there was a dispatching, some errors with the dispatching process that ended up having to give the call away because there's some things I really can't get into just because of HIPAA, Privacy Act and stuff like that. But those things have been addressed both internally with the Ridgew's dispatch, who dispatches the ambulance, and also with Civic County, who receives the 911 calls. I would say that from the outside, looking in and looking at data, it's very positive. I do not see anything that's not working. And that might be contrary to what you might hear in the community, that it's not working, but I don't see what's not working at this point. So it's still early, we're 1 month into it. There's still gonna be some bumps and hurdles maybe along the way. Where everybody's here is working towards fixing those things as they come up and addressing the problems. But so far, I'd say it's okay. Open any questions you might have.
There is a concern with the fire departments that keeps coming up with the feeling like maybe there hasn't been as much communication as they would like to see. And I'm wondering what we can do moving forward to kind of alleviate those concerns. Are you interested in approaching the fire departments to have more conversation about this? Or what are your feelings on this?
I guess it's up to the city if you wanna have more conversations with that. I mean, I think that'd be great. But that would be up to the cities to kinda say, you know, we need to, there's been conversations with the fire departments over time. And so I'm not sure, I think the biggest concern's always been, we don't wanna go on more calls, right? I think the fire chief said, hey, if we go on more calls, it's gonna affect our numbers. But in the 58 calls, there's not been any fire calls, fire hasn't been calling any of those yet, which is what the plan was not to have an impact on the fire departments, and there still hasn't been a call yet. So
Well, and, myself, and I know, 2 other folks here are new as well, I'm not entirely clear on what would bump those numbers up, what would cause fire to be called out more frequently, and I haven't found an answer to that yet, so if somebody can answer that for me, I would really appreciate
it's
it.
due to the lack of having an ambulance responding.
Okay.
So if the ambulance is around, then who's going on that call? And fire would substitute it.
Okay, so that's the concern, it's not, because I know there are calls that fire is automatically triggered,
Yeah.
like automobile accidents and things like that, so it's just other calls beyond those that ambulance would not
Yeah.
be
They're always gonna
responding.
go on certain calls. Cardiac arrest, you
Right.
need more hands, they're gonna go on those calls. So that's still the game plan. But to go out to somebody who's feeling weak, they won't necessarily go to that call. But they're concerned that, well, if the ambulance isn't around, then who's gonna go on that call? But again, the plan is not to be in that position. And again, we won't know if that happens until we do a little trial. But there's no data that supports that there's a higher call out for the fire departments at this point.
I think one of the things that came up, or one of the concerns from some of the fire department, was that Arlington will end up with no ambulance and we're gonna have to do all this. I know that was a concern.
Okay.
And I think part of the hope there again was that with the JPA, not that you're gonna eliminate it totally, but we were close to eliminate it. Only time's gonna tell. January, it did eliminate it. Well, maybe February they might get used once or twice, but it should be less.
Okay.
Well, and other calls that they've been on is like lift assists with the ambulance.
Yeah.
So, but, I mean, that
But
hasn't
that-
been,
That happens normally.
yeah.
I wish the fire chief would've stayed, we could've had some of that conversation here, but.
Yeah, cause he has a lot of concerns about that. And I think as time goes on and they're not getting hit with the calls, he's gonna probably understand it's working, or
But
appears to be
If
working.
fire is asking for more communication, is there any reason why we can't do that, why we can't facilitate that?
Do they want to attend the ambulance meetings, or do they
No, I
want?
think what John had indicated to me was that he feels that there are 5 fire departments that are potentially affected by this, and it would be of benefit for ambulance or this, some sort of communication to be facilitated by the city with all 5 of those fire departments. So,
Just so you know, Sarah's talked with the chief at Gaylord. She's going to the Green Isle Fire Chief on Wednesday. She recently met with the New Albany Fire Chief last week.
okay,
John, we haven't talked to at all directly, and Henderson, which I think there's some service area from here that goes into Henderson, would be the other department. So I think it'd be fine.
Okay.
But we've been talking to him, and
Mhm.
again, it's not like, there was a meeting that I know when Pat was here, he met with the fire chief and
Mhm.
told him what was going on and, explained everything to him. And there was the town hall meeting when all fire departments were there. I don't think New Auburn was there, but the Gaylord, Green Island, and Arlington were all there,
Mhm.
and they heard the, conversation, so.
Okay.
If they, I would also, I think anybody would ask, Sarah would come and,
Mhm.
and or if they have questions about the city, for the city, I think,
Mhm.
I don't think there'd be refusal meeting, right?
Well, we could always have a
absolutely
quarterly meeting with the, bring in the fire chiefs or or whoever would come and Sarah, give an update. I mean, I wouldn't think you'd need it more than once a quarter.
So, I read John's write-up in the paper, and I mean, I believe him for what he says, as far as, kind of feeling like nobody had come and talked to him. So the city has a obligation somehow to, communicate and get with him. There's no doubt that he has a huge impact on obviously what happens with the fire department and leadership within the community. So and I hear what you're saying as far as the numbers, where the numbers are now. So I don't know if it. Clearly, we're already in the stage of this trial period, and I'm hearing the words of merger already, and that, like, when I hear those words, it sounds like, well, it's already happening. Trial is trial to test it out and make sure things function. But somehow, and probably should have happened a long time ago, and maybe there was conversation, but when you lose the fire chief, who is in charge of the fire department, and has a lot of influence on the fire department and the city, it's kind of an uneasy feeling. It's definitely, for me, not really knowing all that much about this coming into it, it sort of shakes you. And okay, is this the absolute best thing to do? And what's the actual problem? Like the problem statement when this was, I deal with troubleshooting and root cause analysis, and you would put together your problem statement first. So what started all this was this lack of people, and I'm assuming that's what it was. But without knowing all that, it's kind of hard to, then come and look at this letter of understanding, and understanding, and we're already sort of moving this forward, and I don't really know truly that much about what is the real problem.
Well, I can touch on that a little bit, give you a little bit of history. We were struggling staffing our ambulance, right? And Gaylord's having the same problem. And it kind of goes in like a roller coaster. Sometimes it's good and we're staffed, and we're not. And usually it's Gaylord that's staffed, and then we're not, and back and forth. And we were just really struggling and wondering what to do with our ambulance. We couldn't staff it anymore. We had open shifts. We don't have people on the ambulance, so we had to come up with a way. Wanted to come up with some fix to that problem of staffing, that we could still retain control and not have to rely on Ridgeview or somebody else to come in and take the service over, and then not having any control over whether or not the fire department does get called out or not. This way, with what we're trying to see if it works or not, right? Because we are in a trial. This is not a done thing. This is just like to make sure the next 6 months or these 6 months go smooth, and everybody's held accountable for their part.
And if it works.
So that we protect ourselves, they protect themselves. That I think is, for me, what I see out of these agreements that we have. But I think that was the biggest thing for me is to see if we can retain some kind of control over our ambulance yet without it just totally falling apart and having to contract. Because honestly, those are two options. It's
Well, and the
let go of our
staffing issues
license.
are gonna persist through time, right? I mean, we don't necessarily see, I mean, this is helping, JPA would help because we're combining these two, certainly, but moving forward through time, rural healthcare, I mean, we're staring down the barrel of fewer and fewer people stepping up for this, right? So, this is a starting point, this is a solution to
Yeah.
start moving us forward, but.
Well,
the
let's
other
see if
hope
it
is-
works. I mean, maybe
Yeah, well,
it's not.
yeah,
gonna
absolutely. I
work.
mean, I think this is our best shot. This is our best shot
Yeah.
to address these issues right now.
And still regain control, and I guess, you know, I had conversations as well, and with the chief, and trying to do what we feel is the best for the city of Arlington is what we're trying to do, and not just with the ambulance, but with all the services.
Yeah.
We
And
c-
our community members, which is, you know,
But I think, you know, clear and ongoing communication could go, has and will continue to go a long ways towards alleviating some of the concerns. Because this is new and it's untested, so.
well, it's honestly the first time in the state that anything like this has been going on, right? A little trial and a.
Well, there's other ambulances that have been purchased or merged or, you know, and I don't mean to use the word merge and mean that, you know, it's already going down that process, but to have two cities consolidate and work towards this is a difficult process. And there's always the emotional side of it, right? Because you have two departments that are have a lot of pride for the years and hours that they put into their service, and to have them start thinking, well, can we do something together, is a very, very hard task. And that's why it's taken a year and a half, is just even get those people to say, we can't do this on our own. They know it, but they don't want to accept that, or, you know, and they try for all their efforts to try to find more, you know, additional staffing, and that's the roller coaster ride, because they'll pick some people up, and those people leave, or somebody else leaves, and so it's always a rolling depth of how many people can respond.
So is there, you know, when I hear about trying to get the staff and don't really know about what's truly being done to get staff, I mean, I know other than putting the sign out here and some Facebook advertisement, I don't personally know of anything else that had been done, so.
And how much can I add to that? You know, we did the Facebook and stuff in the past few months and got more people, but my question would be, how much was done before this process started?
Yeah, and that's,
Right here,
He's answering.
a goose egg, nothing.
Well, I don't know.
I shouldn't say nothing,
But
Yeah, I don't know.
not what we're doing now.
No, it definitely has picked up since Sarah's taken the reins or whatever, at the ambulance. How long have you been with us now, Sarah? A year. So prior to that, we had, somebody else managing. But we
They
had the
They go to
ambulance,
Rotary meetings, they go to or not city, Rotary meetings, what's the other group that meets?
Lions.
Lions.
Lions, and then there's a group in Gaylord that meets. I know that there's been mailings out
Sertoma.
in there.
And then we did our fall festival for the ambulance, and they recruit and
Yeah,
stuff too, so
schools.
I mean, there's always been a little bit, I mean, how much we really push. The problem is, the problem will always remain, and our biggest problem is the daytime hours. That's what we're fighting. And we can.
I would add nighttime to that too. I mean,
Well, I mean, with the low numbers that we have, absolutely,
Yeah.
that's a problem too, but our main problem is the daytime hours. And I mean, we just can't, business has changed. There's not a lot of business in town for people to leave their job and be on call and be able to respond. I mean, they can maybe do nights and weekends, but it seems like it's the same people always doing the same nights and weekends all the time. So you have a core of what, maybe 10 people that are pulling the majority of the hours, even though we have 30-some people.
Well, and some of those folks are seasonal too, right? They're.
Correct.
yeah, I'd received a email, and I was just trying to find the gentleman's name, but I guess he was on the ambulance and had stepped down.
Brian Thomas probably.
Brian Hunt.
No, it was
Wasn't Brian.
somebody else.
Peterson.
Brian hadn't
Think
been
it was
active for
Peterson.
Oh,
quite a
Jim
while
Peterson.
though.
Yeah, 21 years on the ambulance, and so and obviously that was his truth, what he had sent in the email. It sounded like he had sent it to everyone here. So you know, it's like I have some. I don't know if doubt is kind of a strong word, but it's just sort of a not truly knowing all of the information. So between what he's stating and his feeling, and he talked quite a bit about the wage and trying to pay the people as professionals, and not knowing, you know, have we evaluated that aspect of it? You know, merging two towns is kind of complicated. When I read through this, and then probably jumping ahead, and we'll get into it later, but there's several things that, you know, have me questioning. It really reads to what is it, Jim, what's his name, Jim Peterson?
Jim Peterson. Pedersen.
Pedersen, so, you know, he says basically you're handing it over to Gaylord, and the very two top line items on there says Gaylord will be fiscal agent for the ambulance services. Gaylord will do payroll, so there's, I don't know Gaylord's situation with financials. Can they manage money as well as what Arlington does? And, I guess maybe we'll talk more about that coming up, but
Without taking up a whole lot of council time, someday you and I are gonna sit down and talk, and I'm gonna bring you up on a lot of past history. We'll answer a lot of questions for you.
I think it would be helpful if we had a workshop maybe and talk about the ambulance and the JPA.
Yeah,
And
because I mean,
what's-
with so many of us new, and we're coming in so late in this, and we do get questions and comments
Yeah.
from people in town without really knowing the history or how to address it, so that would be really helpful.
And like Daryl said, I mean, we met monthly, every other month for a year and a half before we got to this point, and continue to meet with the group.
Michelle,
the
did you
combined-
update council regularly on those? Cause I don't remember reading about that in the paper.
There was a little bit.
What was
I mean,
happening
as
too.
we were moving forward,
I think
well,
there
we
was-
had
'Cause
the
I
meeting,
think-
we had the open house, we had the meeting.
Mhm.
There was a few press releases and such along the way.
That's all part of the communication issues though that I'm hearing, is stuff happened behind the scenes. It wasn't talked about at council meetings, it wasn't out there for the public to know, it was hidden.
So if we
That's our
can,
concerns.
yeah, if we
the
can
communication
bring that
issues.
out more, you know, step up the communication angle, I think a
Mhm.
lot of people are gonna be more comfortable.
And the one thing we do at our company is bring in, so whether it be asking John to come in and sit on the ambulance, whether it be in the council or just at the meetings, he's probably got a lot of input. I shouldn't say probably, he does have some input, and sometimes when you have them being a part of that, they might see the other side, and then he could share his concerns that might be able to be you know, answered, and things go smoothly, and
Okay, any other questions for Sarah or Daryl before we move forward?
Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maintenance report, Maintenance Supervisor Kirby Wickworth. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening to you.
Oh, it's on.
Oh, it wasn't on?
Wasn't even on before.
All right. I think the last update, I believe Administrator Melvin brought in, so I'll just pick up from the end of where that left off. I had a day off with MLK Day, and then we had snow cleanup from previous storm, and that leaves us with cleanup after our normal clean up uptown and in the lots, so we had snow piles to move in cul-de-sacs, and we've been busy with that. Moving where buildup is bad along curbs, we kind of moved that back, and we're at the point where we got enough snow that we need to make room for the next snow, so we've been busy with that. Other things, ambulance garage overhead door opener, replaced remotes and antennas, those went bad. Been keeping the skating rink in good shape by trying to flood that once a week if it's cold enough. Had several graves marked and cleared snow for burials in the cemetery. Quite a few setup and takedowns here at the community center for Mike. Worked quite a bit with FEMA again on wrapping up road damage and storm pipe collapse, final assessments, and he came back just today with an email to Amy and I that we have a maximum, I figured it out, it's about $3,000 maximum reimbursement for our frost boil damage.
That's it.
We had 60,000.
They're gonna give 3
Repaired.
maybe.
3, but that comes with a lot of conditional and provisions and a long list
What a
of,
joke.
yeah, so it was just a lot of rabbit hole that I ran around getting all that ready, and started to feel that way about halfway through, so it's come to light that it's not worth pursuing anymore, I don't think, and I don't think Amy thought either. It's just pouring a lot of time into it for nothing.
I'm hearing the same story from the townships.
Yeah.
They're
Oh, really?
Spending a
Them too?
lot of time,
Oh my,
and it's just,
Yeah.
For the time spent for what we got,
It was just
unless FEMA
one-
changes their rules. And
Yeah,
that would be
it's-
calls to our US senators to have that happen.
yeah, so it was a lot, and I put a lot of time into that, so it was not nice to hear that news. Other than that, we've had some maintenance of equipment maintenance. We replaced some lights on our tractor and our loader. Had Peeps replace the sprocket and bearing on our lower auger on the blower. Replaced bad sander light. Replaced cutting edges on our V plows and the blower, and also put new skid shoes on the blower. We flipped around the cutting edge on the tractor. Changed out some leaky hydraulic gaskets on the salt truck hoses. Changed water separator filter on blower. Changed serpentine belt on loader. So that's been keeping us busy in the shop. Some of that stuff.
how was the snow blower working? You know, after it's
Good, other than
mounted.
these minor kind of
Yeah,
things
I mean,
happening to it. I think it's just
putting the
all-
wheels under, that was a big help.
Yeah, yes. The front ones pivot, and the first time I had it out, I turned with it, thinking I could turn with them, and there wasn't enough room for them to turn, and they got caught between the front of the blower and a brace, and all of a sudden I started to smell rubber, and I'm like, that's not good. So it had gotten stuck, and then it wore flat on the 2 front wheels.
Can they be adjusted? Is there an adjustment to cure that problem?
No, you
No
just can't
adjustment.
turn with it. So I've been driving with it on the back wheels, which helps, but
And does the company say that's the way we're supposed to do that, or?
yeah, you don't want to tilt the blower too much, but
I mean, they don't tell us
careful
that
about
when they will come to sell it. That's
No.
why I'm wondering if there was an adjustment.
well, the way it's welded on, it's just there's no room for them to turn when you turn. So I found that out, but I still use the back ones, and I think it helps. It's better than having it off the ground. Where was it? So yeah, we had a lot of maintenance and things. I worked on CIP, working on CIP things for the years to come. Getting a bid for recoating our salt truck. Pricing for some more expensive parts that are gonna come down the pike for us with the snow blower. Looking into replacing our building lights with fluorescent lighting. Worked with contractors on getting new bids for our kitchen sink, our prep sink in the community center. I have 2 in. I'm waiting to meet with the one guy yet to get the 3rd bid. Just been doing a lot, built-in maintenance, building stuff, changing out air filters, water filters in the drink fountains. The dry sprinkler system here in the community center, I have obtained one quote for replacing the entire system because it's rusting out. We got a lot of pinhole issues, and I'm waiting on a second to meet with the guy actually tomorrow to get a second bid on that, and that's probably for the CIP. It's nothing we can do immediately, but yeah, I guess coming up, I'm going to continue working on a couple of those CIP items I listed, and got some snow signage. I had a question about snow parking sign uptown. I got to revisit that, make sure we're up to code and up to speed with that. I know there was questioning a couple years ago about it. I had a resident, I think, had a warning ticket or an actual ticket, and she was confused about it, so I gotta check into that this week. And then once the weather is decent again, it's gonna get cold, but hopefully it gets warm again, we're gonna start on our streetlight LED replacements.
You have those in?
Yeah, we finally received the last shipment, so we have all our lights. That's ready to go. I contacted New Ulm, Paul's Electric out of New Ulm, who got the bid, and they're ready to go. I'm waiting to hear back from them. Usually they're a couple weeks out in lining up work, but I'm sure they're waiting for weather to be a good stretch of weather too, which we just had, but that's okay. We got some good months coming up. I'll probably be bringing to light with Amy maybe about Mike's 5 months away from retirement now, so we've got to start thinking about replacing him, and then maybe possibly keeping him as a part-time employee. But I'll,
Has he
address that
given
with Amy
formal
and see how we.
notice of his intent to retire? So
Yeah,
formal
well,
notice?
has he officially informed us or
Well,
what?
typically they'll give a formal notice as of this date,
A
and
written,
I will be retiring. Until then, I mean.
He
could
doesn't
work
know
2-3 more
exactly.
years.
He's waiting. Yeah, he
Yeah.
knows in July, from what he's told me. He says July. I don't know if there's a date. Is there a time he needs to get that in, or what?
No,
what do you
I
do for
just,
that?
typically, especially when you're looking at replacing the person, they have to give at least, normally you'd get a formal notice that they actually are, cause, I mean, he could work 3-4 more years, I mean,
Yeah.
life goes.
I ask
changes
him
happen.
probably almost weekly, because I want to know. I mean, we knew when we hired him, he was going to work 2 years and retire. So,
Well, I guess it would be nice if he knows when he's gonna retire,
Yeah.
just to give us a formal letter on the date.
okay.
Cause then we can prepare and have a vote to post for his position. And the sooner that we do that, or at least give us, 2 months at least, that would be nice.
At a minimum, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, 3
Yeah.
would even be better,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, just so that we can get all of our cards in a row.
There are
Yeah.
some
Have a good
laws
pool.
against asking about that too, so you
Yeah,
might wanna
yeah.
do that.
But it's nice to have that because, well, yeah, I'm probably gonna retire in July, so now you go ahead and you hire somebody. That was July of next year. Now
Well,
what do
until
you, now
until
what
you
do you
get the
do?
letter, yeah.
Without a letter of some
Yeah,
type of
no.
formal resignation,
Definitely.
you don't know anything.
Anything else?
Nope, that's all we
Right.
had.
Any questions for Kirby?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that.
Big up on the screen.
A big
So you guys have a bill tonight from,
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, thanks Amy.
Oh, yeah, that.
Yeah, a few weeks back, this was before Pat left, I think a week before Pat had left, and I saw Eckberg Tiling out there working, so I ran out there, he showed me what they had. They had about 4 breaks that they found. In the field tile, which ultimately is also our pond tile, our retaining pond, stormwater pond. And so I ran in and told Administrator Pat Melvin about it. I don't know if he addressed you guys, but
No.
No.
I didn't know at the time either. I just said, hey, this is what happened. And then later on, I ran into Max Eckberg, and he informed me that he was told to split the bill in half and send half to the city. At which time I think I told Amy after that, well, no, the day you got the bill, I was like,
And I called you.
right. So, and I had just found out. So it's,
Did the city know anything about this split bill? the
we
cost?
televised, no,
We know, nobody knew nothing about it until
Nothing.
they're out there working.
right. So
Who?
we televised this fall, and we did the outlet, and right where they found that break, there's that vertical line meeting the whatever line, down by the pond.
Oh,
That line right there,
Oh, no.
they could not get their camera past that. And then shortly after that tile line came in, there was a break. Which is very telling as to why we get that backup on 7th Avenue and Lynch Avenue when it rains a couple inches in an hour. Which it still would, once the rain subsided, the water would drain still, but it would flood. And I mean, I don't know if that's gonna be the ultimate answer to keeping from flooding, but in one way, it's nice they found breaks and fixed them because we wouldn't have known.
yeah. Well, didn't you do some televising?
Right, this fall.
And
We,
that's-
but
that
we
was on
couldn't
this-
get, they couldn't get past the
Oh,
pipe that's coming in connecting in the field.
So did you order the work then, or who ordered the work? Who ordered the? who
Must have
approved it?
been Hennis,
I do remember some
I don't know.
emails about,
whoever owns the field.
Well, the whole history of it, this was a naturally occurring pothole in the middle of the field years ago. City was experiencing drainage issues all along this area. So, the city acquired this and turned it into an extended holding pond. I guess the presumption was, the city inserted a new drainage line to the pond. And I guess the presumption was a new line was then also installed out of the pond. Well, with these recent breaks, it became obvious that no new line was ever installed here. The original 6-inch farm field tile line is what was there. And that was not sufficient capacity to take this, especially in a wet season. So basically, it blew out. And Pat Melvin was involved with this and our city engineer. And then it was televised and they determined what the problems were. And so then the tiler was hired. I don't know who actually hired him, but Melvin and our city engineer were in the loop on all this, okay? And when the tiler finished the work, he was told to prorate it according to the benefit, okay? And the city was billed for this part, okay? And the farmers were billed half for this, because of course the city's water is coming through this whole system. It ends up in a naturally occurring ravine, which then goes into Highland Creek. Okay. There's also a tile line coming from the Schlieder farm to the north, and he was also billed a portion for his benefit. So, and I think it ended up about, I want to say 40% the city, 40% the landowners, and 20% Schlieder. So.
Attorney Arneson, do we know, and like I said, I don't know nothing about this at all. Do we know when the city acquired those acres from whomever, was there any type of a maintenance agreement drawn up or anything at all in regards to who's gonna take, I'm not saying the city shouldn't pay some of this, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm wondering is, was there any agreement at all, or was this just kind
There
of a?
was an easement, yes.
But I mean, was there an agreement, a maintenance agreement put into that contract when it was signed with, I'm assuming Mr. Hennis, the bank, whomever? Who was gonna take care of these tile lines, and how far out, and what, and,
Well, Yeah, and that's the curious thing, because again, I guess the understanding was the city was gonna put in its own line, but whatever occurred back then, no new line was put in. And again, the outlet remained what had originally been there when it was just a pothole of the field. And that was an old 6-inch farm tile line, okay? And so, I guess and again, I don't know the history of it, I don't know if Bolton and Bank have some notations on it. It's all very puzzling.
Well, yeah, it vary.
Yeah, because I guess, again, the presumption was that the city had its own line coming out of there. But obviously it doesn't, or well, it didn't. And what they put in now is, by the way, they've got a much larger diameter line coming out of the holding pond. So this problem shouldn't recur.
But who's responsible for maintaining that line? Is the city responsible for maintaining that line?
Well, that was the understanding, because it was supposedly the city's line, but now we find out it was actually piggybacked onto the farm field tile. So the city really didn't have its own line out there.
I'm looking at that, or what, it would make sense to me if it was gonna be the city line or whatever, and that we were gonna take care of it. Wouldn't it make more sense just to do a straight line from west to east? And the cost would be, and that would be our line.
Point A to point B.
Absolutely, would be pretty much less than what we
Is it,
are probably paying right now for what
Do we-
Well, yeah, I guess-
happened.
I can't speak to that because I wasn't in the loop.
Neither was I.
I don't think anybody in this room was in the loop to anything.
Well, it was Pat Melvin and the city engineer.
do we know what size line feeds it? Cause it's not drawn and where it would actually,
Oh,
I mean,
From
it's
the
not-
here.
yeah, I mean, obviously probably from the road and then it
Yeah,
just
presumably
It's
comes
got
over.
two
Right.
18-inch lines
Yeah, I
coming
think-
in.
coming into it, so
Yeah.
there's two of them. So we've got two 18s coming in and we've only got a 10-inch cement coming out.
Bolton and Mink does have
Probably
more
spells
information on
disaster.
it, I know that.
Well,
And then
I'm-
also the grade of where, you know, where the lines come in versus where they come out, cause if it's able to drain down, obviously, say you get a 3 or 4 inch rain, then it gives you some room to fill up and it's still draining down after it stops raining.
Well, and that area is actively being farmed, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So, and then if we've got this system underground and, you know, whoever is responsible for maintaining that does not own rights to the land above those pipes, now, doesn't that open up, doesn't that complicate it in some ways? I mean, if that farm is, you know, if that area is being farmed and we've gotta go in, somebody's gotta go in and dig in order to repair those lines, what are the legal implications of that in terms of land ownership and access to those pipes?
Well, if it's done in the off-season, which this was, there's no crop damage or anything, so it's not an issue. If there's an emergency repair, basically the standard drainage law says that, you know, if the farmer loses his crops, he's entitled to reimbursement for the crops, which is why tile repair is typically done in the off-season, if possible. Going back to your question, I guess we could ask the engineers, but they typically shape the course of the drainage tile according to the elevations of the field.
Sure.
So maybe, you know, a straight line,
Yeah, it could be
Higher
low.
here than it is on
Yeah.
this end.
yeah. So the straight line isn't necessarily the cheapest if you have to,
Right.
you know, go to
Excavate more.
greater depth.
But then also the farmer may tie into, I mean, I'm assuming that whole field is probably tiled every so many feet, and where does that tie into, or does it just flow
Well,
to
he's got the field tile marked in there.
I don't think it's pattern tile like
No.
you see some,
Oh,
No.
it's.
just a
it's-
low spot
yeah,
maybe?
Just a low spot.
Okay.
I should mention
Oops,
too,
excuse me.
this doesn't show up very well in the diagram, you see this line? This is another city tile line, actually. It drains this,
Oh, yeah.
this stub street here.
Key.
So
Yep.
that's also actually part of the city's system.
Open intake right there.
Yeah, there's an intake right here that drains this. And there's been problems over the years because that's where the city crew used to stockpile snow in the winter. And then it would melt in the spring and this would be a bog, and I think the DAC was complaining about it in recent years.
Mhm.
So this is also a city line going into the system. But this is the farm field tiles, they're all shown on here.
I think in the future, we need to get some type of I know we're behind the 8 ball, but we need to have something in writing of who is gonna cover what costs before this happens again. Because
And maybe there is something.
but I think we have to follow
Bolton and
that.
Mink would be
Yeah,
the ones to ask,
you know,
cause they're the ones that engineered the pond and everything, I believe.
because when I saw this, I thought, where'd this come from? Who approved this?
Okay, we're jumping ahead here a little bit, we'll get to a little more discussion on that under new business. Any more questions for Kirby? I guess not.
Oh,
Thank you,
yeah, I have
Kirby.
one. That
Yes.
lot we talked about uptown,
Yep.
I noticed the snow is all gone now.
Yeah.
Was that removed by you or the heat?
Me.
You cleaned it out?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we were always doing up to their parking spot and then over to the floral shop.
But have they been
They
keeping
used to,
that
when I
side
first started,
clean?
they were cleaning it. I don't know who was doing it.
But now since
but-
they're not in there anymore, that's not getting cleaned anymore,
Yeah.
correct?
Right. But if the city wants to use it,
But how can we use, I'm not sure we can use it with the no parking signs there. It's full of no parking. I know that's not your problem, but I think we have another issue there.
okay.
I just
Yeah, mean,
needed to
we
know
can-
who was
you got
plowing.
that.
It
because
looks bad when it's not plowed. I'd
Yeah.
just rather clean it up.
That's when we talked that day and I said the snow was like this
Yeah.
and if people were gonna park there, how could they park there? And I wasn't sure if
Sure.
the city was cleaning that or if the old church was cleaning that.
No,
But obviously nobody was.
nobody. Okay.
Any other questions for Kirby?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Item number 9, resolutions 12-2020, resolution approving the letter of understanding between the city of Gaylord and the city of Arlington. Before we even get going, I fully understand what Councilmember Morgan was saying when you have a resolution between Arlington and Gaylord and it is mentioning JPA. And this is not a JPA yet. It's a trial run. There's even the title of the letter of understanding between Gaylord and Arlington, it says, letter of understanding for joint powers agreement. Well, there is no joint powers
It's not
agreement
a
yet.
joint
No.
powers.
So we're jumping the gun a little bit on our terms, I think, and maybe getting the general public confused a little bit with the fact that we're in a trial period. The only thing that saved me when I read this was about halfway through the first paragraph, and I'm referring to the letter of understanding, is the terms of the JPA shall be set out in further detail under a later contract between Gaylord and Arlington. So up until I read that, I was very disappointed in.
So do we wanna put this as a trial JPA?
Rename the document.
Just rename the document.
Well, that's up to the council, but I
Can I just give a little background too, real quick?
Yep.
Sarah brought this over from the city of Gaylord. Gaylord's already signed this and the other agreement between Arlington, Gaylord, and Ridgeview. And something I noticed right away, everything had different dates on. I had talked to Attorney Arneson, the one between Arlington, Gaylord, Ridgeview. We had decided at that ambulance meeting that it was gonna be a 6-month trial period, and that should have been the length of that agreement. And this one too, I looked at it confused because this one goes through August 31st. And I put it on exactly as it came to me because I just wanted to point it out to the whole council, things I saw. So to me, that date is wrong. All the dates should match. They should all be that 6-month trial period. And this should be trial period. It's not a joint powers. And I had a question because it says Gaylord's handling the finances. Well, how much do we have to pay them for that? That's not spelled out in here. It just left a lot of questions for me.
Yeah, me too. I mean, what's our financial state, what's their financial state. It says we're gonna split them 50-50. I mean, right now, it's a trial period.
Yeah.
What's out of the norm to require us to, potentially cover, expenses that they occur? I don't know, especially under the trial, it seems a little, you're testing the waters, you're not diving into, a lifelong agreement. How do we know they're capable of handling the finances? I don't know what their state is.
I think the reason they took that is at the time when one or the other had to be designated as the fiscal manager of it, handling those parts of it, they were more well-staffed than we were. We were just short-staffed at that point, and they volunteered to handle it.
I guess couldn't you come together and present what your expenses were, and then basically make an agreement upon that, instead of just saying, okay, we're gonna give Gaylord they're gonna take care of the payroll and the payroll taxes.
Everything was supposed to be laid out, okay, so as far as how many runs we did, what we're pulling in for money, so good records on each side, either side of that. It doesn't say how much we were gonna pay their admin though for billing, right? That was one of my questions too. I assumed that, and here I'm assuming and not in black and white, but how much that was gonna be. I mean, is it how much we used to pay, or is it gonna be more per hour, what they charge? We typically know how long it takes us, though, to usually bill those kind of things. So I think, for me, it was, I don't know. You bring up a great point where it's not in black and white.
It's not, I'm more of a black and
It's
white
not in
person.
black and white.
This is just, I don't vote on it, but I looked at it and it's so open. I would feel uncomfortable signing.
Can we send this back to them and have them address our concerns, straighten out the date, state how much that pay is going to be for that? So that, and put trial JPA in it instead of JPA, and get it so it answers all our questions and then move
I don't even
forward?
think it would have to be trial JPA, it would be trial merge or.
Well,
Trial
call
merge,
call
just
it whatever you want.
Just take JP out of
If you want
the-
JPA out of there, if that's good, I mean, it's still the same thing.
JPA out of.
No
there,
matter how you
actually.
word it,
Well,
it's still the same thing.
Joint powers is binding.
that's a big step.
Once we get into a joint powers agreement, I mean, Trailblazer, that's a joint powers, there's an example.
Yep.
But all the dates being different, they all should
They should
correlate and be the same.
coordinate with what, yeah.
But that can all be easily fixed.
Well, right, but I mean, they agreed to all these, so, I mean, we have to agree to the same documents, we
We
can't.
have to all agree to the same documents,
Mhm.
which, yeah.
Can we find out the financial state?
Of
Like,
Gaylord.
What you're asking is how much are they gonna charge for their
Charge us.
services?
I'm saying, what's our financial state between our department and what's their state of their department? If they're $100,000 in debt, and we're saying we're gonna pay
I see.
50% of that.
No.
Like
Sarah, could either, or Daryl also, could you speak to that as far as the differences in,
Yes, let me speak first to the date. I believe the dates were for 8 months, that both city councils voted to go for an 8-month time period with a 6-month, and the cause there was that 6 months you'd know whether or not the trial period was successful, and would give you 2 months then to work through a document that would write out
formal-
what JPA was.
Okay.
If we wanted to do
If
that.
you wanted to go with
So
it.
that was, that was the 8
Yeah.
months.
That
that
was
does sound
6 months
familiar.
trial, you got 2 months to figure out what you're gonna do after. Look at the,
Well, that hopefully the decision's made at the 6th month.
Yeah.
Then you have 2 months either to unwind or to process.
Move forward, yeah.
So
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
kind of why
that-
there's 8
You're right,
months.
that does sound familiar.
so that would make August whatever, yeah, that
Correct.
explains that.
That's correct. In regards to cost, I don't know what Gaylord's charging. That was never discussed in any of the joint meetings at all. I don't know if they were charging anything for it. I think they were just gonna be taking it on, but that would be an assumption. So,
Exactly.
as far as expenses and costs, they are keeping a ledger of all the costs that are spent in the year of 2020 and all the revenues collected in 2020, and then that is what is the responsibilities of the two cities divided out between both. So the revenue is split and the expenses are split.
So they,
So if there's any outstanding debt,
That doesn't tie into it.
that doesn't tie
No,
into it.
not at all.
But wouldn't
And
it be
then
a-
capital purchases would be something that I would think would have to be held. You know, that you couldn't do that, that would be an exception to anything because, you know, those are longer term, but if you have to buy bandages and supplies for the events or the medical supplies that you're using, I think that's why it was hard to come up with, well, this is the number, because it depends on how many runs you have, you know, what your expenses are, how many on-call hours are put out by the volunteers. Those are variable costs, so that's why I don't think there was a fixed number that was presented with that. You're gonna have a question?
Yeah, I guess history of financial state goes a long way to basically spell out how the future could likely be. So let's
And
say,
that is, I mean, there is a budget, a quasi-budget for what the expenses are for the year estimated based on history. So based on the number of calls that are going out, number of transports, and the expenses that were incurred for building, you know, gas, fuel, all that kind of stuff.
I think what Joe is getting at is the past history of Gaylord's. Like I have the budget here for Arlington's ambulance to 17, 18, 19 information.
yeah,
Is that
so.
what you're getting at?
Yep, yeah, exactly. So if the history shows that they've somehow either under budgeted or been shortcoming of money, or, you know, maybe not managed it that well, and then now we're saying we're gonna let them manage it, I don't know, without seeing the data. So somebody's not capable of managing money, and then you allow them to manage your money, what's gonna happen to your money? You ain't gonna have it. So that's just an assumption. So without seeing the data, because the way I read this, Gaylord will be fiscal agent of ambulance services. So essentially, they're gonna manage our
But that's
money.
during
and-
this trial period. It
That's-
doesn't go
that's
into
correct.
anything beyond that.
That's
yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and I guess what I look at and what we talked about in our meetings about being the financial managing it is we need to bill and then we're receiving, right? We're purchasing supplies and those, it's not anything to do with major purchases or anything like that. It's just running it for these first 6 months, 8 months, 6
And
months.
we're
until we
asking for
pay.
real transparency here, so we're very aware of what the numbers are, what they're coming up with. You know, it's not something that they're just presenting to us after the fact saying, well, this is what happened.
And they're keeping
Right.
it
I mean,
separate,
separate.
correct? Arlington brought in this much, Gaylord brought in this much, so when we have our meetings, could we get that information, I guess, when we have our next meeting, February 20th?
Right,
Could we see
we asked for that
where,
at our last meeting.
what's coming
That they're
in?
bringing. Well, they should be bringing the financials at the next meeting, absolutely.
A monthly update on
Yeah,
that, I would
monthly
imagine.
update, so we,
To see
so
where we're, yeah.
monthly meetings for the next, what is it, 5 months now? To see and work through things, yeah.
I mean, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
one other item that just occurs to me is we probably should mention in a letter of understanding that there should be no merger of any pension plans or retirement investments or obligations. Since this is just a temporary test period. And that's something that I think there maybe has been some thought put into it, but I'm not aware of what Gaylord has. I presume they have something
I
similar to what we have.
no, they don't, I don't think they
They
have
don't?
retirement, no. I think, not that I
They
remember.
pushed all of their money into, their budget, their whole city budget. They had some CDs and stuff that just went under the city.
But,
But-
like
No,
retirement
they don't have
benefits?
retirement for
PRA,
their
yeah,
people.
maybe?
No, we do, but they do not.
I
So,
thought-
so all that is, I mean, so that's separated. I don't think we weren't gonna do any kind of retirement, in this trial or whatever. It was just straight,
That's why part of the wage went up.
that's why the wage went up, no more retirement. Like the fire department gets retirement. Yeah. So,
So we would
Just
cut
say
ours
we-
off at wherever it's at.
so we
If there
raised,
is
the-
a
Froze ours?
final merger.
we raised the rates that we pay, the wages. So then people want more now instead of later.
They didn't want a retirement.
And they don't want money. The ones that are with Arlington are gonna stay with Arlington, whatever they accrued up until this point.
So it like
Yeah, they
froze.
won't lose it.
Froze. They're not gonna lose it.
So I guess my question is then,
And that was,
why wouldn't we keep payroll processes separate between the two cities? Why would we merge that portion, that component of it, when ours have entirely different plans by comparison to theirs? If we're talking, you know, expenses and splitting that, that's one thing, and making service calls, that's one thing. But when you're paying the people, shouldn't that be allocated separately by comparison to putting it all together just because we're coming into this agreement together?
It's like a marriage. I mean,
Mhm.
you're combining your finances.
Mhm.
And yet we're saying it's a letter of understanding for a trial. When you do that, when you sign on the line, most people join their finances together. Here, for a trial, that's like dating. You haven't quite,
Yeah.
looked into their checkbook, or, combined your incomes, so.
Kurt,
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes,
Does anybody know how much money Arlington has made the last couple of years, or lost on their ambulance? And the same with Gaylord, and is it even? This is supposed to be a 50-50 deal, nobody's ever talked finances, all we hear is staffing, so I wanna hear.
We have the budget numbers, obviously, for Arlington. We know how they did. I have information from 17 actuals, 18 actuals, 19 actuals. I have the revenue and the expenditures.
You could just state them, so people know, or.
For 17, let me unclick myself.
Thank you.
For 17, the actual revenue was $305,240. And the actual expenditures were $262,196. For 18, the actual revenue was $288,630. The expenditures were $277,924. For 19, the actual revenue was $315,683. And the actual expenditures were $253,736.
okay, how much money were we subsidizing?
And the city of Arlington put in,
And the townships?
the townships put in 17, they put in $24,315, that would be the townships in Green Isle. And the city of Arlington put in $47,000. And in 18, the townships in Green Isle put in $9,035, Arlington put in 15. In 19, the townships in Green Isle put in $11,305, and Arlington put in $27,500.
So pretty much we're a minus after those 3 years.
Well, shouldn't Arlington be putting some money into this though, if the townships pay into it? I know you say you're subsidizing, but
well, Arlington is always
put
has a
money into
major,
it.
oh yeah, and we hope to get some from the townships to
Right.
help out.
Mhm.
So-
And,
So was your question related
Well, my question is, so, the way I understand it, last year, Arlington ambulance made about 65,000.
$65,602 was the difference between
And then
revenue and
The previous
expenditures.
year was about in the teens,
Yeah, it was.
10.
10,000?
10,
and 2017 was 43
About 40,
$43,044.
Now, do we know how much Gaylord made her loss?
I do not have Gaylord's numbers except for, just some information. There were preliminary JPA cost projections, which showed Gaylord's 2018 numbers at expenses of $208,948, and their expenses were $208,948. This is preliminary, it looks like 218 data, and their revenue was $137,561. Which would be a loss of $71,000.
Does that include the city's contribution, I wonder? And townships, for that matter?
It includes the townships. I don't know if it includes the city's contribution, but I don't know if the city put in $71,000 in.
Probably not that much.
I don't know.
Did those
That was-
numbers annually include what the ambulance got from the city and from, I mean, if they're showing us, say, a $47,000 profit,
A loss.
but
Who's?
that
ours
doesn't
or theirs?
factor in what the townships and the cities gave them either, but did it?
Who?
The
Gaylord?
ambulance service,
Gaylord?
Arlington.
Arlington. Yes, it does.
Yeah, it
did.
does.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
in
it
there.
does factor that in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
Okay, I didn't know if it was in those numbers, Rick.
it is.
And the city is that based on per capita? Or based on a formula?
It's
Ours
based on
is
the
based on the
formula.
Formula, as is the townships based on a formula.
Right.
Correct, it's all based on the formula.
Arlington is based on the formula.
So I guess are we able to find out if that truly is a $70,000 loss, from what we're hearing?
Or to get their
Yeah,
18
Yeah.
and 19 numbers.
Yeah.
because, I mean, if we sign up and we're liable for 50% of it, and they've got a history of doing that,
Mm-hmm.
Well, it all goes on call volume, right? So to answer your question, I can answer it right here, right now, without even getting their numbers for you. Our call volume is what
It's higher.
in Arlington?
400.
400. Their call volume is 2 something. Okay. They're gonna have a little bit less expense, not a lot less expense, right? Because they're not using supplies, okay? But they're also not calling out their people and having their people get paid hourly just on call. Right? We're gonna be bringing in a lot more money than they're gonna be bringing in. Our expenses are gonna be higher. We're gonna break even
but
closer to the, Daryl can address.
When you combine the two, yes, but I think what he's asking is what's the separation between the two before, and I don't have the answer to that, you have to look at each of those. You do know that you have to look at what's the contribution of the cities, I don't think the numbers necessarily have that in there, what they're subsidizing, and it's a transfer of funds from one fund into the ambulance fund, for both Arlington and Gaylord. All the JPA numbers are looking at combined expenses and combined revenue, not what it was before, what it is, what their separation of, or what the gap was between the two. Both cities are having a gap.
yeah, I think it's just a matter of getting more information, trying to understand what it truly is. If it's 70,000 and we were liable for half of it, I think the community should know that going into it.
What do you wanna do?
Well, I'll just
Have a resolution
state
here
this,
that,
because this is the, Ridgeview now would be operating without any contract under the current operation mode, so that makes me just a little bit uncomfortable that we don't have that. We've been doing that since January 5th, thinking goodwill that it was all gonna happen, but it just makes us a little bit uncovered in regards to what the contract is, so. So whatever you do, I would ask that be done soon,
ASAP,
yes,
or soon.
yes.
I understand where you're at.
Can I make a motion to table, the resolutions regarding the ambulance tonight? Do I have to do one at a time? Probably.
yes.
Make a motion to table resolution 1220 to bring back at our next council meeting, with the understanding that we will have a workshop and research and bring back financials from both communities and any other data, update dates, and the name of the agreement.
The workshop, can I just clarify something? Would you like that to be a workshop with Gaylord or just a workshop with Arlington? And get the information from Gaylord,
I would say workshop with Arlington, get the information
from
from
Gaylord.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
So we're gonna put it off for 2 weeks, have a special meeting, have a council meeting, and make our decision.
Yeah,
So we don't put Ridgeview off any longer,
right.
because we do kinda owe that to them.
Dick,
What-
what about the issues with the dates between the two?
We could.
That'll all
That'll
be
That would be.
Yep.
ironed out, addressed.
If I may, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor. Yeah, I think for clarification, I don't think any of the agreements quite explain it the way that Daryl just did. And so I think what we need to say is that the trial period ends July 5th. But the two organizations would continue operating together until end of August. And we would define it that that additional period of time would be either to unwind or to put together the JPA. Is that,
That's correct.
That makes a lot of sense too, yep.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Batchor, second by Councilmember Gilman to table resolution 12-2020 until next council meeting, would be February 18th. More discussion?